Welcome back to the RP Show, everybody, on Silver State Sports and Game Plus TV. Our guest spot brought to you by Prairie Panels. Are you building a shop, barn, rink, or commercial space? Prairie Panels provides high-quality insulated wall and roof panels designed for durability and energy efficiency. Visit prairiepanels.ca or call 306-985-0050. Our guest is Janice Taylor. What I love about her is when I ask your title, it's like, well, it could be many things. The latest is founder and CEO of Wilson 4Q. Janice, it's been a couple weeks. Welcome back to the program. What have you been up to?
Oh my gosh, so much. But thank you for having me. And can I just say hello to your fabulous fans and your listeners because they're always so kind to me when I come here. And so when you asked me to come
They're the
back, I'm like,
best.
of course, because your people are the best. So thank you. So we have been so busy with not only designing Wilson 4Q, which is a small language AI technology, but we've also been building the athlete optimization collective. So those two things. And then the third bucket for my fellow women is we've been working on perimenopause retreats for the perimenopausal women of the world. So if any listeners have wives, or if the wives are themselves, we kind of work in those three buckets. So it's been really good, interesting.
Well, good. Well, I know you've been busy. And to be honest, you gave me some speaking points. I'm going to go a little out of order with them if you don't mind, because
Okay.
the AI thing's been
Yeah.
coming up a lot this week and last. AI in sports. And you've been doing this for a while. Can you make it make sense for
Yeah.
people? Because I feel like a lot of people don't
Yeah.
understand it.
Yes, it's thank you for asking me this question. I've been in technology 17 years and I was the first woman to launch a digital animation AI product across pro sports in 2014. So I was very early in AI. So first it's like to understand what's the usefulness of AI and what it's not useful for. So right now I think you have a major disconnect between the population understanding what it does and what it is, and those that really understand it. And I think that that gap needs to be narrowed because where you have a few people really understanding it and a lot of people not, that's where you have corruption, consumption that you don't need, data that isn't useful, and then you have this massive confusion. And then ultimately, you've got a guy making a decision who's going to eliminate jobs. And like you were mentioning in the break, like your dad that was a scout that could see things, that's still really important. We still need humans in sports. You still need humans to understand the game because there's a lot of nuance. And because we do emotional fitness, there's a lot of nuance in emotion, and you can't code that, and you also can't use data for that. So that I want to say out, from the gates. But what you can use AI for is pattern recognition. So where AI is really good that humans can't see is they can look at swaths of data. So let's use sports. You can look at hundreds of thousands of games, and you're looking at the games and you may be following, a Connor McDavid around and looking at him, but you may not notice the four other guys or how they respond or what they do, right? And you don't know if that's actually effective and useful for someone like a star player like Connor. So what AI can do is it can look for the patterns that humans can't see. But that still has to fall into the hands of a human to actually A, believe that this is, can it be optimized or changed? And does it impact the outcome of whether someone wins or loses or not? And the most effective, use of data is to do things that humans can't. So what I always say to people that are interested in AI, I'm always like, AI isn't to replace humans. It's to do things humans can't. And what we're doing right now is like AI for food, AI for this, AI. Like, to be quite frank, most of the AI data consumption is completely useless. In fact, it doesn't optimize anything. But people are like, oh, collect the data, collect the data, collect the data. And then they're like, share the data, share the data, share the data. But actually, when you're looking at AI as how it computes things, it doesn't use 99% of the data that we hoard. So it's completely inconsequential. And so when we look at these large language models like OpenAI or ChatGPT, They are consumption machines. They are the cookie monster who doesn't know how to stop eating. They don't actually know how to decipher or to thread or to really sift through the data in a proper way for a use case. So this is why we build on what's called a small language model, which is they're verticalized for specific use cases. So if sports really wanted to understand how to utilize AI better, they would use something like what we do, which is Wilson. Wilson is a small language model that analyzes 4 quadrant health behavior. So we look at your mental health, your emotional health, your spiritual health, your physical health. And what we can see is how this system responds in real time. So I'll give you an example, and I'd love to know the examples from your people if they have some. Say a guy wins or scores 100 points against the lowest team. Easy to do, right? You can go out and jack up and score 100 points in a basketball game. But then what happens when that player has to play someone of their equivalence? So let's say that they have to play or guard someone in basketball or hockey or anything else that's just as good as them. Do they get better or do they get worse? And so what you'll notice is that there's a pattern in that behavior. So you can use AI to analyze that kind of response to emotion, which is what we do, which is we believe is like sort of the secret ingredient. But right now, the nonsense, and I want to say this in full love because I'm in technology, the nonsense of everyone trying to package AI and sell it to sports is nonsensical. Because the main thing is you've got a bunch of Luddites, for lack of a better term, still running a lot of hockey teams and a lot of and then you've got a lot of like people telling them, oh, you can use this AI. Well, yes and no. Like if it's not built specifically for your use case, it's like the example I just gave you, it's not very useful. You can have lots of insights, but at the end of the day, you still have to have these athletes perform. And and the thing that we look at the most, which again I'd love to know your audience on this, is we look at the combination of 3 players. And so this is it shows up in Phil Jackson's, triangulation of how his triangle offense works. If you look at any major dynasty that's done well, wasn't one guy, it was 3 guys. So if you look at, for example, like I'll use Gretzky, Messier, and Coffey. There's a good example of a combination of 3. If you looked at Jordan, maybe you'd look at, Jordan, Pippen, and maybe Rodman, or you'd look at another player that you'd put in there. If you look at Magic Johnson, it was Magic Johnson, Kareem, Worthy. You kind of look through the combination. And so, where an organization can actually look at something effectively is you look at the combination of players together, and that's how you can elevate performance. So, I'd love to know if your audience has other combinations of 3s like Aikman, Emmett Smith, Irving. There's another combination of 3.
That's my
If you
team.
kind of look at it,
Yeah.
is that your team? So if you kind of look at that
Yeah.
combination, those that don't have really high emotional fitness from the combination of the 3, they often won't win. And so there's an often disconnect. So from an emotional fitness perspective, utilize AI is, it's really to reveal patterns that a human can't see.
I'm just enjoying listening to you. And while my mind went somewhere with the Cowboys thing, we're still trying to find the magic trio in Dallas. That's another story for another time. But I just find it fascinating. And then
True
my
story.
mind, as you were talking, my mind's going, well, Connor Bedard is a kid that the better players he's with, he gets better. He doesn't
Right.
sink. And that would seem very elementary, but it's not elementary because a lot of guys, when you surround them with the better talent, they sink. He gets better. And
Yeah.
but that's a special player. Right. Hmm.
You can actually train that in someone. And so, for example, if someone's scouting players right now, chances are what they're scouting is like how many points, how many assists, how many rebounds in basketball, like how many points played, what's the ERA. Like you're looking at numbers that are really, really useful. And so what we do is we look at exactly these factors of emotional fitness scores. Like we actually have, it's called an EFI index. And we can predict how that person will respond to that kind of pressure before they're. So, like, if you take a Connor Bedard as a great example, like he just elevates, right? He gets better and better. We saw this with Macklin as well, right? Sabrini, we saw him playing with Sidney Crosby during the Olympics, and the kid just got better and better and better as it went on, right? Like, he's a good example of that because when you have healthy emotional fitness, you absorb the energy of rising, but you also have enough guys with a maturity level, like a Sidney Crosby and the rest, that you're surrounded with that are really excited for a kid like Macklin, right? That to score, like you want him to do well. And so that ego, which is like, no, I'm the best ever. No, you can't be me. And you don't elevate the next generation of guys. What you have is actually it's an energy that's felt. And so that is emotional fitness at its prime. And so what we try to do, we've been meeting with different agents in different sports, and we've got lots of athletes. So if people want to head to the athletes.wilson4q.com, you can read about the collective. I've been interviewing a lot of athletes post career, and all kinds. I had a great conversation with Terrell Owens. I talk with a lot of athletes, and I often will ask them, like, what's the one thing you could do different? Like if you were to like look at your whole career, and not specifically Terrell Owens, but all of the athletes, the one thing that they often will say is that they would have checked their ego a bit more. They often will say, like, I wish I would have had emotional fitness then, that I could have checked my ego and enjoyed the ride more, like enjoyed the process, because when it ends, that ego crumbles. And so this is what we're doing with the Athlete Optimization Collective, which is 30 athletes. We're bringing them together. We're giving them all of this optimized health. We're using Wilson to analyze it, and we're following them for 12 months, and then their scores. So we've got 5 guys MLB, 5 guys NHL, 5 guys in each of the 4 leagues, plus 5 in NCAA and 5 military. And there's a little bit of a competition amongst them all, in different ways. But essentially what we're bringing together is we're really looking for this next act. But in interviewing these athletes, that's the thing that they feel humbled by now that the show is over, is like, oh, darn, why didn't I should have checked that ego ahead of time. And so what you see in where franchises fall apart, they often don't fall apart because of talent or skill. And so they don't often fall apart there. Where they fall apart, like they just don't. They fall apart in this emotional fitness category, which is what we're doing with all of the athletes.
You realize you're setting up part 4 of this interview. And of course, my mind went to the Cowboys falling apart and ego of the owner and the coaches. But you've brought up emotional fitness many times. I don't really know what it is, and I work in the industry, and I know we're running out of time. That's why we're going to have part 4. We had like 5 minutes. You're good. But how would you explain emotional fitness to the layman?
Okay. Emotional fitness is an emotional center in your body, no different than your heart and your brain. Think about an emotional system like a box that receives signals, emotion first before you think it. So it enters your body before you've thought about it. Like you don't think before you breathe, you just breathe, right? But that actually came from a signal to say to breathe. When you think something, it actually started as a feeling first. So you can imagine this little box inside of yourself that has its own engine, its own system. It functions in a specific way. That is injured in 99% of the world's population. So emotional fitness is optimizing that box. It's not talk therapy, it's not mental health. Mental is head. This is your sensory system. It is your system that receives signals. Should I be afraid? Should I like this? Is this good? Should I pass the puck? Should I shoot? Should I do anything? Before you've made a decision, it starts in your emotional system. I spent the last 30 years of my life studying that system and learning that it was injured, unbeknownst to most human beings in the world globally. Doesn't matter your gender or age or where you're from. It's injured, and it's injured before your 10th birthday. I wanted to prove that it could be optimized, healed, and defined. So you can think about emotional fitness just like you do your physical fitness. In your physical fitness, you have calories and food. And does your body move? Do you have breath? That's your physical fitness. And you need to eat well and move in order to optimize it. And athletes optimize their physical body. And now they say they're optimizing their mental fitness, how they think. But they haven't even touched the system that actually sends the signal to how they think. So we work in that unknown area that's never been defined, because I spent 30 years of my life defining it and studying it and proving that it could be healed. And not just healed, that it could be optimized. It can and is your superpower. And so you can optimize it.
Oh, I'm smiling because they don't even know it's there. As you know,
No.
I'm just trying to I'm trying to communicate that to the viewers, right? Because we go fast, and I'm fascinated by this. Clearly, you're fascinated by this, and I feel like everybody will be once they get onto it, you know. And I guess that's why it's
Yes.
important that
Well,
you
you
get the
can,
word out.
exactly. Thank you. And you can sort of think like, okay, I'll use Tiger as an example. Everyone thinks that Tiger is an addict and he's a train wreck and he's mentally crumbling, right? That's what people think. I look at Tiger and see a very underdeveloped emotional system. I see someone who is unable to manage any feeling that he has. So he numbs and stuff, it goes into his head, and he's trying to do the same thing, beating his head against the wall, not understanding it. And so every human being alive has an emotional system. What you don't know is that everything starts in that first, before it goes to the physical body and before it goes to your mental body. It starts in the emotional system. And what we're here to do, and what you're doing, Rod, that's so important, and your audience here is to share this, is that this is not mental health. Emotional fitness is like an organ in your body, for lack of a better term, and you need to make sure it's healthy because it governs everything you do. Everything you do as a human being, everything you do. So for athletes that have optimized their mental fitness and their physical, they've ignored this. But this is where the data is interesting. In AI, I have trained Wilson to look at patterns to see the emotional system.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll finish it the next time, Janice. We're out of time. Thank you so much, Janice. I appreciate it. Thanks a lot. All right, keep
Bye.
in touch.
Thank
Janice
you.
Taylor joining us,
Bye.
everybody from Wilson 4Q. We'll be coming right back with a sports update and viewer takeover. You're watching the RP Show across Nevada on Silver State Sports in Canada here on Game Plus TV.